broken promises. There have been too many in the last few years, too many in the last 30 years. In fact, our nation has been littered with them, a trail of broken promises. You remember them: fairer taxes, a promise broken; better schools for everyone, a promise broken; cleaner politics, a promise broken. I believe it's time to do things differently. I believe it's time for fairness in Britain. I believe it's time for promises to be kept. I totally accept your point, which is going into coalition's a controversial thing, and you know the polls aren't as good as they used to be. But without being sort of too pious about this, I actually think the things we've done, sort out the economy, give people tax cuts, provide more apprenticeships, do the right thing in our schools and nurseries and so on, is the kind of thing, is a kind of legacy of which I'm very proud.
I think the students would say you'd blown it.
Yeah, well, look, on the issue of tuition fees, which you'll clip quite rightly, I mean, look, I was between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, but you made a promise.
I believe it's time for fairness in Britain. I believe it's time for promises to be kept.
Bedroom tax, just very, very quickly, I mean, a number of us voted against it and felt that whilst the principle of only paying people housing benefit for the rooms that they need is fine, that's happened in the private rented sector, introduced by Labour, by the way, but to do it retrospectively to people who were relying on that second room, maybe they were a dad who cared for their children 2-3 nights a week, but that didn't count, and or all sorts of reasons. It struck me as being a very, very wrong thing. And although it wasn't called a bedroom tax, that epithet stuck like a poll tax. It was effectively a tax, so you couldn't avoid paying. And so our policy has now moved away from that. If it had anything to do with me, I wouldn't repudiate much of our time in coalition, because I think we did a load we should be dead proud of, and that's something I think we should never have signed up to.
Ask you about some of your personal views now. You are said to have said that abortion is wrong. Society has to climb down from the position that says there's nothing morally objectionable about abortion before a certain time. If abortion is wrong, it is wrong at any time. Did you say that?
So yeah, I think that was in the context of a discussion about whether abortion law as it was should remain the same or change. And the context was that I was saying the law should remain the same.
OK, but personally, as a Christian, you believe abortion is morally wrong, do you?
Well, I've always said every abortion constitutes a tragedy, but that does not mean that I personally think I have any right under law to intervene with the restrictions as things are. The law to me, and I'm always guided by the science and the medical evidence on this, the law to me looks about right. OK,
on another vote that I think you have slightly different political and personal views on, you've abstained during votes on same-sex marriage in the past. You've said recently that politically you regret that. Personally, though, do you think, as a Christian, that homosexual sex is a sin?
Well, I think that, first of all, I mean, somebody who is a Christian does not then go enforcing their views on other people. And it's not our issues, our views on personal morality that matter. What matters is, do we go out there and fight for the freedom of every single individual to be who they wish to be?
OK, I take your point, but
that's what makes a liberal.
OK, but I'm asking for your personal view. Do you personally, as a Christian, believe that homosexual sex is a sin?
To understand Christianity is to understand that we are all sinners, and perhaps the Bible phrase that I use most, particularly with my kids, but actually on myself, is you don't pick out the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye when there is a plank in your own. The reality is, if to understand the Bible, and perhaps another time you want a long theological discussion, my understanding is that, well, my firm belief is that we are all sinners.
OK, but when the Bible says you shall not lie with a male as one lies with a female, it is an abomination, you don't have any problem with that?
Well, look, I mean, so fundamentally, my faith is based upon my belief that Jesus Christ is who he said he is. But again, Kathy, you know, this is a very interesting discussion. It's important to me, but I've
But it's
not
important
just
to
been,
your party as well, because these are values that I appreciate are your personal values, but they're not very liberal values, are they?
You might remember them, the Liberal Democrats. That's right. They used to have lots of MPs, not so much anymore. The Liberal Democrats, the Progressives, the Radical Centre, the 48%, the party of Remain. Well, you've probably seen their leader on TV screens the last few days, Tim Farron. Who hasn't heard of Tim Farron? You know, the guy who thinks that all homosexuality is sin and that gay people are like fishes and frogs and that they might be cured by some treatment. Well, put Tim to one side too, because he's an idiot. He'll be in the dustbin of history soon enough, and general elections are bigger than just one person. OK, fine. So we won't judge the Lib Dems by the leader. Let's judge them on, I don't know, the 5 years they had in government between 2010 and 2015. You know, when they propped up the Tories and implemented austerity? That's why they're so keen to talk about the EU and Article 50 after all, is because they've got nothing to say on anything else. So I'm going to outline some key areas where they were absolutely degenerate in government not that long ago. Number one, they tripled tuition fees, okay? Previous to the 2010 general election, they said they would eliminate tuition fees. You wouldn't have to pay to go to university, they said. And then they go into government and they increase tuition fees, not by 10%, not by 20% or 30%, 300%. 300%, unforgivable, unforgivable. Number two, they cut taxes for the very wealthiest in society and for hedge funds. So not only did they not want you to get on, to be better educated, you can earn more money, get a better job, they're also wanting to make life easier for the very wealthiest in society. Number three, guess what? Kind of links in with that. They increased VAT. They increased VAT, and this is the tax that whether you earn £5 an hour, or nothing in fact, or whether you earn £1,005,000 an hour, you pay the same rate of VAT. It's the most regressive tax to increase. It hits the poorest the hardest. They voted for it to increase. Then they changed the electoral register. So basically, those registered to vote had a new system to engage with. About 1 million people were basically struck off the system. Voter disenfranchisement, effectively. Who gets disenfranchised? Well, it's the same people that are affected negatively by VAT going up. It's the poor. It's ethnic minorities, the most transient communities out there. So you tell me what's so woke about Nick Clegg and Tim Farron and Vince Cable, when they're looking out for the rich, they're pissing on the poor, and they're increasing taxes for the millions and they're cutting taxes for the millionaires. Doesn't make much sense to me. Then there's the introduction of means testing for child benefit. Child benefit. They introduced means testing for child benefit. Now, I'm not going to go into the benefits of universalism, right? How good it is, how important it is. It builds consent for welfare systems, and actually, we know statistically, scientifically, it brings down inequality. It increases social mobility. They did something against that. They wanted means testing for child benefit, okay? So, voter disenfranchisement, means testing, cutting taxes for the rich, increasing taxes for the poor, but it doesn't stop there. It does not stop there. There was the bedroom tax. You remember that? That hit the poorest the hardest once more. They were there, nodding there like little Chinese cats. They were up for it. So you tell me what's so woke about the yellow Tories, because I'm still yet to hear anything that confirms that. Anything.